And then there's the blockchain, Bitcoin programming. My first thought was, with these videos, I wanted to get right into the Ethereum programming. And I just wanted to hit on the Bitcoin topic, just a little 5-10 minute video just to give you an idea of what it was. But then I bumped into something that said we should study Bitcoin programming before studying other areas, because that's the basis for everything. So that really makes sense to me. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You might think you're doing something new and revolutionary, and here you're just doing the same thing that Bitcoin has already done. So that makes sense. I taught music for 8 years, and I remember I had one fella come in. He said, "I'm studying on my own. I'm doing it all by myself." And he's a young guy. He's saying, "I invented a chord," and he just showed me a D chord. He was reinventing the wheel. So that's why it's good to study what's already been done. Okay, so this here is a topic that you'll see come up a lot. If you're into the programming stuff, they always say Bitcoin is not Turing-Complete. So what's that mean? It just doesn't have loops. When you're doing the programming, you have loops, for loops and while loops, and no loops and no branching. And the main reason Satoshi set it up like that was to avoid DOS attacks, denial of service attacks. And that's what they mean by Bitcoin is not Turing-Complete. So they call it Bitcoin script is Turing incompleteness. So Bitcoin script, no loops, no branches. So there's two things going on here. There's Bitcoin Core, which is just written in C++. And then they have Bitcoin script is based on opcodes. So let's get into some general stuff here first. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. As I put this together, I bumped into certain things and I just threw them in the file, and it may not be ordered all that great. Okay, so as of 4/2018, the latest version is 16. So here we can go to GitHub. Hopefully you heard of GitHub. If you haven't gotten into it yet, do a search on YouTube how to use GitHub, Git and GitHub. And it's basically just a website where you can store your code, your programming code, and others can check it out and download it. Okay, so here is the GitHub for Bitcoin. So if you come down here, you can see the code here. So the main area would be the source folder here. Before we get into that, I want to show you these here. You have these tabs here along the top. You can go in and read through some of this stuff. go into the source folder here. And you can see it's all just C++, CPP, CPP. Main, if you know C++, is Bitcoin D. Bitcoin D. Here, D for Damon. Okay, so it's pretty small. Main's pretty small here. We're not going to go into great detail here. I'm just pointing to the location of it. So what you can do is you can actually download it to your desktop. Okay, so you can actually download it to your desktop. I've already done that. It comes down as this zip file. Hopefully you know how to download things and extract the zip file. And you get this folder here. Here's your source code folder here. Okay, so this part here, if you go to this link here, that brings you to this, and you download this Bitcoin Core, pick your operating system. What this will do is download the version that you can run. So you would download this to your desktop, click on the exe, and then you're actually running a full node. Where here, this is the source code. You would have to compile it. But this is the actual exe that you can run. When you run it, they call it Bitcoin Core. And you can see here it says Bitcoin Core initial synchronization would take time and download a lot of data. You should make sure that you have enough bandwidth and storage for a full blockchain size over 145 gigs. So what happens is you download this, you start it up, but then when you start it up, it synchronizes your computer, your desktop computer or your laptop, with all the other Bitcoin cores around the world, and it downloads all of the blockchain, all of the Bitcoin data, and it's 145 gigs from day one, from the very first Genesis block. You get all of the data, and that's why it's so big. Now inside that Bitcoin core, it's actually like 4 different things inside there, and you don't have to use them all, but it comes with all 4 of them. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. Oh, this part is cool here. You can click on Show Version History, and it shows you the versions. It only goes back to 2011 here. 3, 4, 5, 6. So 2/26, 2018, version 16. Okay, so to get back to the code though, this C++ that we're looking at here, let's see if we can find Bitcoin D. This is some pretty heavy duty C++. So I don't want you to get the idea that you can learn this in a week or months. I've seen advertisements. They say, learn programming in a week. Well, I don't think so. It's just like learning to play guitar. Each person is different. Some people can go faster, some people go slower. But it's like learning to be a doctor in a week. It's just not going to happen. If you already know C++, you might be able to learn Java in a week. Or if you already know PHP, you might be able to pick up C++ a lot faster. But learning your first language, that may take a few years. You might be able to do it faster. You spend 8 hours a day with it, or 16 hours a day with it. But in general, I'm talking in general for the average person. We're talking, at least 5 years worth of courses. It's not only reading the books or taking the courses. The C++ knowledge has to mature in your mind until you can kind of start to understand it. The more you read it, the more you look at it, it raises your level of comprehension so you can absorb more. Like, let's say a 5-year-old, you're trying to teach them the alphabet, right? They may be only able to remember 5 or 10 letters. As they get 6 years old, 7 years old, they can remember 15 letters. They get 7 years old, they can remember all of the letters. Their level of comprehension has gotten bigger, so they can remember more. Well, it's kind of the same thing here. The more you do it, the more you study it. Looking at this source code here, there's 158 items here. It would be practically impossible to go through all these files in a week. If you drink a lot of caffeine, I suppose you could. I suppose you could do it, but nah. You just go insane. Years ago, if you've been around for a while, you probably remember Visual Basic. I remember reading in a Visual Basic book. It was like the very first paragraph of the book. It said, Visual Basic is real easy compared to Visual C++. And Visual C++ programmers always put down the Visual Basic people. These days, Visual Basic is a lot more powerful, but back then it wasn't. But the first paragraph said, Visual C programmers pride themselves on the power of Visual C. as they quietly go mad trying to study the stuff, where Visual Basic made it real easy. So, I'd say these files here, it's not only these files, but there's other files inside these folders too. But this whole source code folder, it could easily be at least a 15-week course, if not more. Once you already know C++, once you already have a good understanding of C++, then you would start studying this stuff. So, I'm talking to the beginners. You would have to go through at least a 2-year program, 3 or 4 C++ courses, and then you would get into studying this type of thing. This stuff here, this is like the best of the best, right? You couldn't jump into and study C++ program used at NASA in a week, right? It just wouldn't be realistic. So, of course, you may go faster or slower. Lots of the stuff is on the command line. So if you're not used to the command line, you should get the hang of that. There's a lot of GUI stuff, clicking on buttons. But if you're going to get into the programming end, you should be somewhat familiar and comfortable with the command line. I have a couple videos on that if you're interested. In general, I've heard, and this goes for any topic, if you read 3 books, you can consider yourself an expert on a topic. So, you can take that one with a grain of salt. Like if you were going to be a brain surgeon, you'd think you'd want to read more than 3 books. Just like if you're going to be an expert programmer, you should have read more than 3 books. But in general, that's what I've heard over the years. And another saying is, they say study a topic for 10,000 hours, which it basically works out to 8 hours for 3 years. You study it 8 hours a day for 3 years. So another thing is, they say when you get into a new topic, first year you can be good, second year you can be better, and the third year you're an expert. And then I would have to say 3 years plus. Now, of course, if you grew up with this stuff, you might catch on a lot faster. So, each person is different. On that bitcoin.org website, there's this link, and it's a developer guide. Looks pretty good. You can see how here's the table of contents here. And here, there's a lot of big topics here. Okay, we've already talked about main being in Bitcoin D. I just happen to bump into this one here. If you go into add RDB. Okay, so we're in add RDB. I just wanted to give you a general idea of some of the topics. Here he's using namespace. I have a few videos on namespace if you've never dealt with them. He's using templates. I also have a few videos on how to understand templates. And then he's writing streams. He's calling a class here. So this C hash writer, that's a class. And just to give you a general idea, I hunted through some of these, and C hash writer, that's in hash.h. So if we go to hash.h, here's our hash.h. And if we scroll down a little bit here, here's our C hash writer class. Okay, you can see how he took that class and he stuck it into a header file. And then he included it here. That's what he's calling here. So all I'm doing here, I'm just giving you a quick example of some of the high-level topics in C++ that he's using. It's not the type of thing you skim through in a week. So here in computer science, in the context of data storage, that's what blockchain is all about. You're storing things to the hard drive, you're storing things to the blockchain. Serialization is the process of translating data structures or object state into a format that can be stored. So C hash writer is in hash.h. This link was pretty cool. It shows you how the classes flow from one to the other. So here it says C hash writer, a writer stream for serialization that completes a 256-bit hash, include hash.h. They also use makefiles. Here's some makefiles. Something I skimmed over was when you download this and open it, these will be just regular files. When you open it, do open with and then choose WordPad. See, if you open them in Notepad, you get this type of thing. There's no formatting. But if you right click it and go open with WordPad, that's probably the best way. You can do it with Word too. Open with Word. if you have Word on your system. If you're going to get into studying this stuff, it's nice to make it small enough to where it all fits on one line. You know, like this line here. It's kind of hard to see what's going on because this line extends down here. So sometimes the lines are too long and they're going to break. They're going to go down to the next line. But it's nice to minimize that as much as possible. Like this comment here, you know, this clause, it would be nice if that was up here. It just makes it easier to read, to see what's going on. Okay, so when you first open these, you can see some of them are, you know, when you get this blank icon, the system doesn't know what program to use to open the file. So it just gives you a blank icon. This icon here, that's the icon for WordPad. So when I double click on it, it automatically opens up in WordPad because that's the way I set it up. Here, I'll show you what I'm talking about here. See, if I right click that and go open with Notepad, let's see here. If I right click that and go see, I can change that here. Properties, change to Notepad. So you can see now they all changed to a Notepad icon. But when I open them, I get this stuff here. So it's best to open with WordPad. It should ask you, first time you do it, it'll ask you to, do you want to do this for all of them? And just say yes. Okay. And you have to do it for the C++ and the header files. And it looks like there's a C++ and a header file. C++ header file. C++, and then there's no header file for that one. Oh wait, let's see here. Let's see. C++ header file. Then he's got another header file here. C++ with the header file. C++ with the header file. And so on. And then there's also some make files. Open with, see, it doesn't know what to open it in. So it's asking me what to open it in. So here's your make files. Pretty heavy duty make files here. So that's what this is here. There's books written on make files. I found this one is a GNU make manual, GNU is basically just Linux stuff. You know, there's more to it than that, but in general, it's basically just Linux stuff. So 220 pages, just on making a makefile. Not that you need to be a genius on makefiles, but you should be aware of what's going on. O'Reilly has a book on makefiles. Here's the first chapter I found online. I just happened to bump into this one here. It's the GNU C manual. Most of the code in that source folder is C++, but there might be a few things in here that might help. I saw a few size ofs in there. There's some pointer stuff here. Some if and while loops and stuff like that. So this could come in handy. I found a good tutorial online that shows you how to use a makefile. Here's that makefile book. GNU Make. Some people pronounce that with the G, and some people just say new. New. Pretty sure it's pronounced GNU. Basically just meaning open source. And then here's something on header files. How to use a header file. This fella here, Ivan, he's got a lot of good videos on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and things like that. He goes into explaining forking, and he shows you how to get it off GitHub and things like that. Manning is a book publisher. Groking just means understanding, you know, deep understanding. You know, they use all these weird names in their titles, and they're kind of confusing to me, anyways. You know, that word, I had to look that word up. It's like, what's that mean? So it should be understanding Bitcoin. It would make more sense. But you can read the first chapter online for free. The main book on Bitcoin is by O'Reilly, and it's called Mastering Bitcoin. There's a new edition, the second edition. You can download the PDF for free. When they wrote this book, they did it on GitHub. So you can actually download a free copy. The fellow that wrote it is this Andreas Antonopoulos, and he's got a lot of videos on YouTube where he goes into great detail about Bitcoin and things like that. I would definitely check out his YouTube channel, but this would be like the main programming book. but it's high level. So I have a couple screenshots here, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so that's just the book. Okay, so this would be the second edition. I must have found it online. Okay, so here he says, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a collection of concepts and technologies that form the basis of a digital money ecosystem. Units of currency called Bitcoin are used to store and transmit value among participants in the Bitcoin network. Okay, so I just wanted to give you an example of the book. So here's page 2. This would be the next page. So 11. So here it's 300 pages. And you can see this goes back to 2010. Okay, so PC World, that's a good magazine. When I first got into computers, I always went to them. These days it's online. There's some good articles about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency that you can find there. So what is Bitcoin Core? Here's a good video that explains it.